I'm Miles, 34, and I never thought buying my first house would trigger a family nuclear meltdown. After years of careful saving and zero help, I finally had the keys to my own place. I was proud, excited, ready to celebrate. Then my golden child brother Elliot found out. His reaction? Complete meltdown. Apparently, my success was a personal attack on him. 15 years of being the family afterthought didn't prepare me for how my modest achievement would threaten his entire identity. Before I share how my brother's jealousy turned my proud moment into a family war zone, take a second to like and subscribe if you've ever had to fight for recognition in your own family. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and if you've dealt with a golden child sibling. Growing up in suburban Chicago with my parents Olivia and Frank Campbell was an exercise in invisibility training. From my earliest memories, the family's spotlight had one permanent focus: my brother Elliot. He was 3 years younger, but somehow that translated to a lifetime of preferential treatment that was impossible to miss. The contrast started early. Elliot showed musical talent around age 7 when he picked up a toy keyboard and plunked out a recognizable tune. Within a week, my parents had purchased a brand new upright piano and arranged weekly private lessons with the best teacher in the district. Meanwhile, I had maintained straight A's since elementary school, even skipping 8th grade math to take algebra with the high school freshmen. My report cards were met with quick nods and immediately redirected conversations about Elliot's latest recital. "That's nice, Miles," my mother would say, barely glancing at my perfect grades. "Did you hear Elliot's piano teacher thinks he might be ready for the regional competition?" The pattern continued throughout our childhood. When Elliot turned 15, our dad spent every Saturday for 3 months teaching him to drive in empty parking lots, patiently explaining every technique. When I turned 16 a year earlier, I was told to take the bus to the DMV for my test and to figure it out myself. "Your brother needs more guidance," Dad explained when I pointed out the unfairness. "You've always been independent." That was the word they used whenever they neglected me. Independent. As if my self-sufficiency was some innate quality rather than a survival mechanism I'd developed from years of being overlooked. My mother kept a detailed scrapbook of Elliot's life. Every school photo, every certificate, every newspaper clipping when his elementary school choir performed at the mall. She had professional photographs taken when he won a school talent show. My own achievements: debate team captain, National Honor Society, perfect SAT math score, were lucky to merit a spot on the refrigerator for a week. The disparity was never clearer than at our high school graduations. I graduated second in my class and received a department store watch that still had the clearance sticker partially peeled off. When Elliot graduated 3 years later, barely, with AC average saved by his participation in band, my parents gifted him a used but still impressive car. Their explanation? "He needs encouragement to succeed in college." The implication that I didn't need such encouragement stung worse than the unfair gift. Through it all, I developed a practical, self-sufficient attitude that served as both shield and sword. I started working at 16, stocking shelves at the local grocery store every evening after school and all day Saturdays. I opened my own bank account without telling my parents and saved every dollar possible. When I earned an academic scholarship to Penn State, my parents barely acknowledged it at dinner. "That's great," my father said, before immediately turning to Elliot. "Have you thought more about which music programs you're interested in?" Elliot ended up attending 3 different colleges over 5 years, dropping out of each one when the coursework became too restrictive for his creative process. As my mother would explain to family friends, each time, my parents covered the wasted tuition and welcomed him back home with understanding smiles and home-cooked favorites. They never once asked how I was managing on my own. Through those years, I had exactly 2 allies, my grandmother Grace and my childhood friend Tyler. Grandma Grace was my mother's mother, and she alone seemed to see the blatant favoritism. She couldn't directly challenge her daughter's parenting without causing a rift, but she made sure I knew I was valued. "Your parents don't see it now, Miles," she would tell me during our private lunches. "But someday they'll realize what a remarkable person you are." She slipped me $20 bills, for books, and was the only family member who drove to Penn State for my college graduation. Tyler lived across the street growing up and witnessed the disparity firsthand. He saw how Elliot's mediocre piano performances drew relatives from 3 states away, while my debate team national finals received 0 family attendance. Tyler's family often included me in their vacations and celebrations, providing the sense of belonging my own home lacked. The day after college graduation, I moved to Philadelphia, far enough from Chicago to make casual visits impossible, but close enough that Grandma Grace could occasionally visit. I was determined to build a life that didn't depend on family validation I'd never receive. My early career in Philadelphia wasn't glamorous. I started at an entry-level marketing position that barely covered my shared apartment rent and student loan payments. My degree in business analytics had earned me the job, but the company culture was cutthroat and advancement opportunities scarce. For 2 years, I worked 60-hour weeks trying to prove myself while watching less qualified colleagues with better connections move ahead. Everything changed when Victoria Reed, a senior marketing director who had recently transferred from the New York office, noticed my work. During a particularly stressful campaign launch where the analytics were failing, I stayed overnight rewriting code and saved the presentation. Victoria found me asleep at my desk at 7 a.m. "You've got remarkable skills," she told me after reviewing my work. "But you'll burn out working like this for people who don't appreciate you." Under Victoria's mentorship, I learned to advocate for myself professionally. She helped me refine my resume and interview skills, and within 6 months, I landed a better position at a digital marketing firm where my analytical abilities were actually valued. With Victoria's continued guidance from afar, I steadily advanced from analyst to team leader to department manager. Throughout these years, I maintained the strict financial discipline I'd developed as a teenager. I tracked every expense in detailed spreadsheets, setting aside 30% of each paycheck for savings, regardless of how tight money got. I brought lunch from home, lived with roommates longer than most of my colleagues, and restricted myself to 1 modest vacation per year. My friends often teased me about my frugality, but the growing numbers in my savings account gave me a security my family never had. The contrast with Elliot's financial situation couldn't have been starker. About once every 3 months, I'd get a call from him asking for a temporary loan until his next gig paid out. I always refused, knowing from experience that any money sent would never return. Through occasional calls with Grandma Grace, I learned that my parents regularly bailed Elliot out of credit card debt, paid his rent when he forgot, and even covered the costs when he totaled his car driving after having just a few drinks. "It's not fair how they treat him like a child," Grandma Grace confided during one call. "They're not doing him any favors." My parents rarely called, but when they did, the conversation inevitably turned to Elliot within minutes. "Your brother is exploring opportunities in music production," they'd say, somehow making unemployment sound like an exciting career path. They never asked about my work or my life unless it was a perfunctory question quickly bypassed. I met Sophia during a weekend volunteer event at a community garden. She was patient and thoughtful, with a quiet confidence I found instantly attractive. On our 3rd date, over Thai food, we discovered we had similar family experiences. She was the responsible daughter overshadowed by a younger sister who consumed all the family's emotional resources. "It's like they decided I'd be fine no matter what," she said, "so they never worried about me. Meanwhile, you're left wondering what you did wrong to deserve being ignored," I added, feeling that rare connection of being truly understood. Our relationship developed naturally, without the pressure or drama I'd witnessed in my friends' dating lives. Sophia, an architectural designer, shared my appreciation for stability and planning. We both enjoyed quiet evenings, hiking on weekends, and building a drama-free life. Over 5 years in Philadelphia, I built a circle of genuine friends who appreciated my reliability and dry humor. Tyler visited often from Chicago, bringing updates about the neighborhood and, increasingly, concerning news about my parents' health issues that they never mentioned to me directly. After 5 years of consistent performance and additional certifications earned on evenings and weekends, I was promoted to senior marketing manager. The substantial salary increase came with greater responsibility but also greater flexibility. For the first time, I felt financially secure enough to consider buying property instead of continuing to rent. "You should do it," Victoria encouraged over our monthly lunch meeting. Now the CMO at my company, she had become both mentor and friend. "You've been saving for years. Real estate in Philly is still relatively affordable, and you're throwing money away on rent." That night, I opened my special savings account, the one I'd been contributing to since my first job at 16, and was surprised to see it had grown to a respectable down payment. After years of disciplined saving, I was ready to take the biggest financial step of my life, completely on my own. House hunting quickly became our weekend routine. Sophia and I would grab coffee on Saturday mornings and meet our realtor, Darlene, to view properties in our price range. The first few weekends were disheartening. The houses in my budget were either in questionable neighborhoods or required renovations far beyond my DIY skills. "Maybe we should wait another year," I suggested after a particularly disappointing Sunday viewing a house with alarming water damage hidden behind freshly painted walls. "Don't get discouraged," Sophia said. "The right place is out there. We just need to be patient." True to my analytical nature, I created detailed spreadsheets analyzing neighborhoods, property taxes, school ratings, even though children weren't yet on our radar, appreciation potential, and crime statistics. I calculated commute times and proximity to amenities, assigning weighted values to each factor. Some nights, I'd stay up late adjusting my algorithms, trying to find the perfect balance between affordability and livability. 3 months into our search, Darlene called with excitement in her voice. "I've got a place you need to see immediately," she said. "It just listed, and it checks most of your boxes." The house was a modest 3-bedroom in a transitioning neighborhood northeast of downtown. Built in the 1940s, it had good bones but needed cosmetic updates throughout. The kitchen featured outdated oak cabinets and laminate countertops, and the bathrooms had seen better days. But it had hardwood floors under the worn carpet, a surprisingly large backyard, and, most importantly, it was within my budget. "The owners are relocating for work," Darlene explained. "They need to sell quickly." After 3 walkthroughs and hours analyzing comparable properties, I decided to make an offer slightly below asking price. The night before submitting it, I barely slept. This would be the largest financial commitment of my life, and I was doing it entirely on my own. "What if it's a mistake?" I asked Sophia as we lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. "Then you'll figure it out," she replied simply. "You always do." The next few days were a blur of negotiations, counteroffers, and anxiety. When the sellers finally accepted an offer just $5,000 above my initial bid, I felt equal parts elation and terror. The inspection process brought its own stresses, minor plumbing issues, some electrical concerns, and the need for a new water heater, but nothing that would derail the purchase. Securing financing proved easier than expected. Years of financial discipline had given me an excellent credit score, and the loan officer seemed impressed by my detailed knowledge of my own finances. Still, signing the mountain of paperwork at the closing felt surreal. Each signature brought me closer to a milestone I'd never seen modeled in my family: responsible homeownership achieved through planning and hard work. The moment the realtor handed me the keys, I felt a surge of emotion I hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just a house. It was tangible proof that I had succeeded despite the lack of family support or encouragement. It was validation that my independence, once a dismissive excuse for my parents' neglect, had become my greatest strength. That night, I called Grandma Grace with the news. "Oh, Miles," she said, her voice cracking. "I am so proud of you. So very proud." Her reaction, the pure joy and vicarious pride in her voice, was everything I'd ever wanted from my parents. I found myself fighting back tears as I described the house to her in detail. The following weekend, Tyler drove in from Pittsburgh, where he now lived, bringing tools, pizza, and beer to help with initial move-in tasks. We spent the weekend tearing up old carpet, patching walls, and planning renovation projects I could tackle one at a time as my budget allowed. "You going to tell your parents?" Tyler asked as we collapsed on camping chairs in the empty living room, exhausted from a day of work. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to share the news, but another part knows exactly how it'll go. Elliot will make it about him somehow," Tyler predicted, having witnessed this pattern our entire lives. Sophia, who had been helping us paint the main bedroom, sat down beside me. "You should tell them," she said gently. "Not because they deserve to know, but because hiding it means they still have power over you." She was right, as usual. After a week of deliberation, I decided to invite my parents to Philadelphia for dinner to share my news in person. It felt more mature than announcing it over the phone, and I naively hoped that seeing my achievement firsthand might finally earn their recognition. "That sounds nice," my mother said when I called with the invitation, sounding surprised. "Is there a special occasion?" "Just some good news I wanted to share in person," I replied. "Oh, are you and Sophia getting engaged?" she asked, suddenly interested. "No, Mom, it's not that," I clarified. "Just something important to me that I'd like to share." "Well, we'll try to make it work," she said, her enthusiasm noticeably dampened. "Your father's back has been acting up, but I think we can manage the drive." The night before they were set to arrive, Grandma Grace called. "I heard you invited your parents to dinner," she said. "I want you to prepare yourself, Miles. They might not react the way you're hoping." "I know," I sighed. "But I have to try, right?" "Just remember that their reaction doesn't diminish your accomplishment," she said firmly. "I'm so proud of you, no matter what." Her warning echoed in my mind as Sophia and I prepared dinner in my apartment, where we'd host my parents before showing them the house. We decided on a menu that was impressive but not too fancy: roast chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, roasted vegetables, and a store-bought cheesecake for dessert. I even bought a bottle of champagne for a toast, feeling both optimistic and foolish for hoping this time might be different. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to find not just my parents, but Elliot standing between them with his signature half-smile. "Hope you don't mind," my mother said, already moving past me into the apartment. "Elliot was visiting for the weekend and wanted to see Philadelphia." My carefully planned dinner for 4 now had to accommodate 5, with the last-minute addition being the person most likely to derail the entire evening. Sophia squeezed my arm supportively as she helped me rearrange the table. "Looking good, bro," Elliot said, glancing around my apartment with the mild interest of someone inspecting a hotel room. At 31, he still dressed like a college student, with deliberately distressed jeans and a vintage band t-shirt. His hair was longer than when I'd last seen him at Christmas, now pulled back in a small ponytail. Dinner began with uncomfortable small talk that quickly morphed into the Elliot show. My mother peppered him with questions that allowed him to dominate the conversation with stories about his latest musical project, an experimental jazz fusion band that was really about to break through. "We've got interest from some pretty important industry people," he said vaguely when my father asked about actual progress. "You can't rush the creative process." I caught Sophia's eye across the table and saw her subtle eye roll. We'd heard variations of this "about to make it big" narrative for over a decade. When the conversation finally hit a natural lull during dessert, I decided it was time. "So, I wanted to share some exciting news," I began, pulling out my phone to show photos. "I bought a house." I passed my phone around, displaying pictures of the modest but charming property. "It's a 3-bedroom in Fishtown. Needs some cosmetic work, but it's got great potential. I close next week." My mother took the phone, glanced at it briefly, and passed it to my father. "That's nice, dear. Is the neighborhood safe?" Before I could answer, my father handed the phone to Elliot without comment and asked, "Did you get a good interest rate? The market's been unpredictable." I launched into an explanation of my fixed-rate mortgage and the research I'd done on appreciation in the area, feeling like I was giving a business presentation rather than sharing exciting personal news. "Seems like a big commitment," my mother interjected. Are you sure it's not too much house for just one person? Sophia helped me with the whole process, I said, reaching for her hand across the table. We've already planned some renovation projects together. Oh. My mother brightened momentarily, looking between us. So you'll be moving in together? Not immediately, Sophia clarified. But we're talking about it for the future. The momentary interest faded from my mother's face. She turned to Elliot, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, staring at my phone with an increasingly tight expression. What do you think of your brother's house, Elliot? She asked. Elliot placed my phone down carefully, too carefully, and forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It's great. Really suburban dad vibes. Very conventional. He reached for his wine glass, his fourth of the evening, and took a long drink. So what prompted this sudden interest in settling down? Last I checked, you were all about building your career. I can do both, I replied evenly. The property is actually a good investment. The neighborhood is up and coming, and I've been saving for a down payment since college. Must be nice, Elliot muttered, swirling his wine. Some of us are pursuing passions that don't pay out right away. My father, sensing tension, tried changing the subject. Elliot's band might have an opportunity to open for a national act next month. They just need some help with equipment upgrades. And there it was, the pivot back to Elliot and the subtle hint that financial help was needed. It was so predictable I almost laughed. I'm planning to redo the kitchen first, I continued, refusing to be derailed. The cabinets are original 1940s, but not in a good way. I'm thinking white shaker style with quartz countertops. As I described my renovation plans, I noticed Elliot's face darkening. He refilled his wine glass without asking if anyone else wanted more. His leg bounced rapidly under the table, causing the dishes to vibrate slightly. Finally, as I was explaining my plans for the backyard, Elliot slammed his glass down, splashing red wine across the white tablecloth. So you think you're better than me now? He demanded, his voice tight with anger. The table fell silent. Sophia froze beside me, her fork halfway to her mouth. What? I asked, genuinely confused by the outburst. This whole thing. Elliot gestured wildly around the room. The house, the fancy job, the perfect girlfriend. You've always thought you were better than everyone else. Elliot, my mother said softly, placing her hand on his arm. Your brother is just sharing his news. No, he's showing off, Elliot insisted, shaking off her touch. He invites us all the way out here just to rub his success in my face. Meanwhile, I'm actually doing something meaningful with my life, creating art, not just being another corporate drone. Nobody said anything about, I began, but Elliot cut me off. You've always been so smug about your so-called achievements, he continued, his voice rising. Getting perfect grades, your fancy college scholarship, your promotions. Like the rest of us are just failures because we don't measure success by how much money we make. My father awkwardly cleared his throat. Son, I'm sure Miles didn't mean to. To what? To show off how he doesn't need anyone. How he's got it all figured out while I'm still finding my path. Elliot stood abruptly, causing his chair to scrape loudly against the floor. I'm not going to sit here and be judged by my brother who thinks he's God's gift to financial responsibility. Elliot, please. My mother pleaded, now standing too. You're overreacting. Am I? He laughed bitterly. Ask him if he timed this whole house thing just when my band is finally getting noticed. Ask him if he did it on purpose. The accusation was so absurd I couldn't even formulate a response. Sophia's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tightly. I think you've had too much wine, my father said, also standing now. Let's get some air. Fine, Elliot snapped. I don't need to stay for this self-congratulatory bullshit anyway. He stormed toward the door, my parents immediately following him like attendants to royalty. My mother paused briefly at the door. He's just going through a lot right now, she explained, as if that excused everything. We should probably get him back to the hotel. Thank you for dinner. And just like that, they were gone, rushing after Elliot without so much as acknowledging the wreckage left behind. No congratulations on the house. No apology for Elliot's behavior. Not even a proper goodbye. Sophia and I sat in stunned silence amid the ruins of our carefully prepared dinner, the champagne still chilling uselessly in the refrigerator. What just happened? I finally asked. Exactly what Tyler predicted, Sophia replied, squeezing my hand. Elliot made it about him. Later that night, my phone rang. It was Grandma Grace. Your mother called me, she said without preamble. Apparently, Elliot is very upset. About my house? I asked incredulously. About everything, she sighed. Miles, I'm so sorry they couldn't just be happy for you. I am, though. Incredibly happy and proud. Her words were a bomb, but they couldn't completely erase the sting of yet another family milestone ruined by the golden child's tantrum. I woke Sunday morning to 7 missed calls, 3 from my mother, 2 from my father, 1 from an aunt I rarely spoke to, and surprisingly, 1 from Elliot himself. There were also numerous text messages, primarily from my mother, ranging from concerned, "Please call us back, we're worried," to guilt-inducing, "Elliot cried all night, he feels terrible about how things went." Checking social media was a mistake. Elliot had posted a long, vague status about toxic family members who flaunt their material success while others struggle to pursue their dreams. He didn't mention me by name, but the timing made it obvious who he was referring to. Several relatives and family friends had commented with supportive messages, clearly unaware of the actual situation. Unbelievable, Sophia muttered, reading over my shoulder. He's playing the victim. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Elliot feels you bought this house to overshadow his career news. Please call him and apologize so we can move past this. I showed Sophia the message, feeling a familiar hollow sensation in my chest. She wants me to apologize. For buying a house. With my own money. That's ridiculous, Sophia said firmly. You don't owe anyone an apology for succeeding. By midday, I'd received a stern voicemail from my father. His deep voice carried the practiced disappointment I remembered from childhood. Miles, we raised you to value family harmony. Your brother is going through a difficult creative period, and your timing with this house announcement was insensitive. You know he's more emotionally vulnerable than you are. Call your mother, she's very upset about all this. Not once did he acknowledge Elliot's inappropriate behavior or congratulate me on my achievement. The pattern was so familiar it almost felt comfortable. Elliot acts out, I'm somehow responsible, and my feelings are irrelevant. When Elliot's call came through that afternoon, curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. Hey, he said, his voice raspy, likely from his emotional performance the night before. Got a minute? I'm listening, I replied neutrally. Look, about last night, he began, sounding rehearsed. I may have overreacted a bit. It's just been a really stressful time with the band. We're finally getting some recognition, and I was planning to announce that I'm moving back home to focus on music full-time. Translated from Elliot's speak, this meant his latest venture was failing, and he was moving back in with our parents. Again. I was going to tell everyone at dinner, he continued, but then you started talking about your house, and it just felt like you were trying to one-up me. Again. Elliot, I had no idea about your plans, I said tiredly. I bought a house because it made financial sense for me right now. It had nothing to do with you. See, that's your problem, he said, his voice hardening. You never consider how your actions affect others. You're so wrapped up in your perfect little life. What exactly do you want from me? I asked directly. There was a pause before he answered. I think you should acknowledge that your timing was insensitive. And maybe hold off on the house announcement to the extended family until after my band situation develops further. The audacity was breathtaking. He wanted me to hide my achievement, so he could have the spotlight for what amounted to another failure. That's not going to happen, I said firmly. I'm not hiding my life to make you comfortable. Wow, he exhaled dramatically. So that's how it is. You know, I've always defended you when Mom and Dad say you abandoned the family. But maybe they're right. The conversation deteriorated from there, with Elliot cycling through guilt, anger, and finally, vague threats about setting the record straight with the family about what kind of brother I really was. Over the next few days, the situation snowballed. Elliot had apparently emailed several family members with his version of events, painting himself as the struggling artist being bullied by his materialistic brother. My inbox filled with messages from relatives I barely spoke to, expressing disappointment in my insensitivity, and urging me to make peace with my troubled brother. Even my mother's sister, Aunt Diane, who had attended exactly none of my life milestones, felt entitled to email. Family should support each other, not compete. Your brother has always looked up to you, even if he doesn't show it. The emotional toll began affecting my work. I missed a deadline for a major campaign proposal and found myself unable to focus during meetings. Victoria noticed immediately. "What's going on with you?" she asked, pulling me aside after I zoned out during a client call. "This isn't like you." I gave her the abbreviated version of the family drama, feeling embarrassed to be bringing personal issues into the workplace. To my surprise, Victoria didn't dismiss the situation. "Family dysfunction is real and can be debilitating," she said. "My brother didn't speak to me for 2 years when I got promoted at my previous company. He felt I was showing him up." Her understanding broke something loose in me, and I found myself sharing more than I intended: the lifetime of being the family afterthought, the constant prioritization of Elliot's feelings, and the frustration of having my hard-earned achievement twisted into something malicious. "Have you considered talking to someone professional about this?" Victoria suggested gently. "This sounds like a long-standing pattern that's affecting your quality of life." Sophia had been suggesting the same thing, recommending her own therapist who specialized in family dynamics. I'd been resistant, feeling like seeking therapy would somehow validate my parents' view that I was the problem. But with my professional life now being affected, I couldn't ignore the suggestion any longer. The situation escalated further when Elliot unexpectedly appeared at my office building the following Tuesday. I was returning from lunch when I spotted him pacing in the lobby, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. "Elliot? What are you doing here?" I asked, genuinely shocked to see him in Philadelphia. "We need to talk," he said, his eyes red-rimmed and intense. "You're not answering my calls." "I'm at work," I pointed out. "We can't do this here." "When else are we supposed to do it?" he demanded, voice rising. "You're too busy with your perfect life to care that you're tearing the family apart." Several colleagues turned to stare, including Victoria, who was returning from a client lunch. She assessed the situation quickly and approached. "Miles, is everything all right?" she asked, her eyes communicating much more than her casual tone. "This is a family matter," Elliot snapped before I could respond. Victoria smiled pleasantly, extending her hand. "Victoria Reed, CMO. And you are?" Elliot looked taken aback by her professional demeanor. "Elliot Campbell. Miles's brother." "Well, Elliot, I'm afraid Miles is scheduled for a client call in 5 minutes. Perhaps you could arrange to meet after work hours?" Her calm intervention gave me the moment I needed to regain my composure. "Elliot, I'll call you when I'm done today. We can meet for coffee around 6. He looked like he wanted to argue but seemed intimidated by the professional setting and Victoria's authoritative presence. "Fine. 6 o'clock. Don't flake." After he left, Victoria turned to me with raised eyebrows. "Family dynamics indeed. Take the rest of the day if you need it." I didn't take her up on the offer, but I did call Sophia to warn her about the upcoming meeting. She insisted on joining me. "I'm not letting you face this alone," she said firmly. The coffee shop meeting was a disaster. Elliot arrived looking like he'd rehearsed a tearful monologue about family loyalty, but Sophia's presence threw him off script. He vacillated between accusations about my abandonment of the family and thinly veiled requests for financial help with his band. "Mom and Dad have always had to pick up the slack because you refused to help," he said at one point. That's what families do, they support each other. Support goes both ways, Elliot, I replied. When was the last time you showed any interest in my life? The conversation went nowhere, with Elliot eventually storming out when I refused to accept responsibility for his feelings or offer money for his latest venture. That evening, Grandma Grace called to warn me that Elliot and my parents had been discussing a trip to Philadelphia to see the house, without consulting me first. They think if they can talk to you in person, you'll come to your senses, she explained. Whatever that means. The next day, I made 2 appointments, one with Sophia's therapist and another with a locksmith to change the locks on my new house, just in case my family had somehow gotten the address. It was a good thing I did, because 2 days later, a neighbor at the new house texted me a photo of my parents' car slowly driving by the property. After a productive first session with Dr. Harriet Chin, I made a decision. Instead of continuing this exhausting long-distance drama, I would address the situation head-on my terms, in a controlled environment. Dr. Chin helped me script boundaries and prepare for likely emotional manipulation tactics. I called my parents and proposed a meeting at their house in Chicago the following weekend. I think we need to clear the air about everything that's happened, I said. In person, with everyone present. My mother sounded relieved, clearly assuming I was coming to apologize. That's very mature of you, Miles. Elliot will be so glad to put this behind us. I asked Sophia to join me for support, and also called Grandma Grace, who immediately offered to be present. It's time someone else witnessed how they treat you, she said firmly. The drive to my parents' suburban Chicago home felt like traveling back in time. The same meticulous landscaping, the same perfectly aligned welcome mat, the same family photos prominently displaying Elliot's achievements in the entryway with my graduation photo relegated to a small frame on a side table. We arrived precisely at the agreed time, 2 p.m. on Saturday. Sophia squeezed my hand reassuringly as we waited at the door. Grandma Grace had arrived separately and stood beside us, her presence giving me unexpected strength. My mother opened the door with a practiced smile that faltered slightly at the sight of my reinforcements. Oh, I didn't realize you were bringing everyone. I mentioned Sophia would be coming, I said pleasantly, and Grandma Grace wanted to visit. The living room was set up almost like an intervention, my parents on the sofa, Elliot in the armchair, with space clearly left for me to sit alone opposite them. Instead, I took a seat on the love seat, with Sophia beside me and Grandma Grace pulling up a dining room chair to complete our side. Elliot looked surprised by this arrangement, clearly having expected me to face them solo. He was dressed more formally than usual, in a button-down shirt that looked newly purchased. Thank you all for meeting today, I began, using the opening Dr. Chin had helped me prepare. I think there's been a lot of miscommunication, and I'd like to clear things up. We agree completely, my father said, leaning forward. Family should always come first, and these disagreements. I'd like to finish, Dad, I interrupted calmly. I've prepared some thoughts, and I'd appreciate the chance to share them uninterrupted. My father looked taken aback but nodded reluctantly. From my messenger bag, I removed a folder containing bank statements, property documents, and a timeline I'd created. First, I want to address some accusations that have been circulating about my house purchase. Elliot shifted uncomfortably as I methodically addressed each point from his emails to the family, that I had timed the purchase to overshadow him, impossible since I'd been in the buying process for months, that I was flaunting wealth, the house was actually below the median price for Philadelphia, and that I had somehow betrayed the family by achieving financial independence. The fact is, I concluded, I bought this house with money I saved over 17 years, starting with my grocery store job at 16. I received no financial help from anyone for the down payment or closing costs. I paused, looking directly at Elliot. And I certainly didn't do it to upstage anyone else's life choices. The room was uncomfortably silent. My mother kept glancing at Elliot, clearly worried about his reaction. My father studied his hands. Furthermore, I continued, I'd like to address the pattern that's been present our entire lives. I brought a list of specific examples where Elliot's needs and feelings were prioritized over mine. I began recounting instances, from childhood bedroom arrangements. Elliot got the larger room because he needed space for creativity. To educational support, my parents attended every one of Elliot's school events but missed my national debate championship. To financial disparities, the car versus watch graduation gifts. Miles, this is ancient history. My mother interrupted, her voice tight. Bringing up childhood grievances isn't productive. They're not just childhood grievances if the pattern continues today, I countered. Even now, I'm being asked to diminish my achievements to protect Elliot's feelings. That's not fair, Elliot interjected, his face flushing. You have no idea what it's like living in your shadow. You were always the smart one, the responsible one. Everyone expected me to be like you. No one ever expected you to be like me, I replied evenly. In fact, quite the opposite. You were given endless chances and support that I never received. That's ridiculous. Elliot stood abruptly. Mom and Dad have always been fair. Have they? Grandma Grace spoke for the first time, her voice gentle but firm. Elliot, when was the last time you paid your own rent? The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. Elliot's face went from red to white. That's not relevant, he stammered. It is if we're discussing fairness. Grandma Grace continued. Miles put himself through college. He's never asked your parents for money as an adult. Can you say the same? My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Different children need different types of support. Exactly, I agreed. But in our family, one child always gets everything, and the other gets nothing. That's not true, my mother protested. We've always loved you both equally. Love isn't just words, Mom. It's actions. It's showing up. It's recognizing achievements without immediately redirecting attention to someone else. Elliot was still standing, looking increasingly agitated. So what, you want a medal for being self-sufficient? You want us to throw you a parade because you bought a house? Some of us are pursuing meaningful work instead of chasing money. And how's that meaningful work going, Elliot? I asked quietly. Are you still working at the music store, or did they let you go again? His expression told me everything. That was temporary anyway, he muttered. The band is about to break through. Yes, I know. It's been about to break through for 10 years now. Elliot's face contorted with anger. You smug bastard! You think you've got it all figured out with your corporate job and your house and your perfect girlfriend. Some of us actually have dreams beyond a white picket fence. Dreams require work, Elliot. And failure is part of growth. But you've never had to face consequences because Mom and Dad always clean up your messes. That's enough. My father interjected. Miles, you've always been more naturally disciplined than your brother. Elliot is an artist. He sees the world differently. That doesn't excuse treating us differently for our entire lives. I replied. Do you know what message that sends? That Elliot is special and deserving, while I'm just an afterthought. We never meant to make you feel that way. My mother said, tears forming. We just thought you didn't need as much from us. You were always so independent. I became independent because I had to. I said, my voice finally betraying emotion. Not because I wanted to be. Elliot was pacing now, his rehearsed calm completely abandoned. This is bullshit. You're making it sound like they abandoned you when they've always been there for both of us. Have they? Sophia spoke up unexpectedly. Miles told me they didn't attend his college graduation. Is that true? My parents looked genuinely uncomfortable now. My father shifted in his seat. There was a situation with Elliot that weekend. He needed us. What situation? I asked, having never heard this explanation before. A heavy silence fell over the room. Elliot stopped pacing, looking suddenly trapped. Elliot had an issue with some credit card debt. My mother finally admitted. The creditors were threatening legal action. We had to help him sort it out. So you missed my graduation, the culmination of 4 years of work I did entirely on my own, because Elliot maxed out credit cards? The hurt felt fresh, even years later. It wasn't just that, my father said defensively. Elliot was in a very fragile state. We were worried about his mental health. Grandma Grace made a small noise of disapproval. And Miles's mental health never concerned you? The way you consistently overlooked him never seemed problematic? We didn't overlook him, my mother insisted. Miles was always fine. He never seemed to need us the way Elliot did. Did you ever ask? Sophia's question was gentle but pointed. Another uncomfortable silence filled the room. I want to ask something directly, I said, looking between my parents. Has Elliot been receiving financial support from you that I never knew about? My parents exchanged glances. My father cleared his throat. We've helped Elliot with some expenses over the years. It's not relevant to. What kind of expenses? I pressed. Just living expenses. Rent sometimes. Car payments. Sometimes? Grandma Grace raised an eyebrow. My mother sighed. Elliot's rent is automatically paid from our account. It has been since he moved out. And yes, we set up a trust fund for him when he turned 25. The revelation shouldn't have stunned me, but it did. A trust fund? While I was working 3 jobs to pay for textbooks? Your situation was different, my father insisted. You had scholarships. You had a clear path. Because I worked for it. The control I'd maintained began slipping. I earned those scholarships through years of hard work that you never acknowledged. Elliot suddenly kicked a side table, sending a lamp crashing to the floor. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Mr. Perfect rubbing everyone's nose in his accomplishments. You think you're so much better than me because you can follow society's rules like a good little soldier. Elliot, calm down, my father urged, rising to restrain him. No! Elliot shook him off. I'm sick of this. He comes in here with his spreadsheets and his timeline, like we're on trial. He's always judging me, always making me feel like a failure. Grandma Grace stood now too, her small frame somehow commanding. Elliot, this isn't about you right now. This is about a lifetime of imbalance that needs to be addressed. Of course you take his side. Elliot sneered. You've always preferred him. I've tried to provide balance. Grandma Grace replied calmly. Someone needed to see Miles's value when his own parents were blind to it. My mother was openly crying now. That's not fair, Mom. We love both our sons. Then why? I asked quietly. Did you drive by my new house without permission last week? Why couldn't you just call and ask to visit like normal people? My parents looked genuinely shocked. How did you know about that? My father asked. The neighbors saw you. I had to change the locks because I was worried you'd try to get in. We would never, my mother gasped. We just wanted to see where you'd be living. Elliot was concerned about the neighborhood. And there it was again, Elliot's feelings being the justification for inappropriate behavior. I need you all to understand something, I said, gathering my documents and standing. I'm proud of what I've accomplished. I worked hard for every bit of it. And I'm done diminishing myself to protect Elliot's ego or maintain some false family harmony. I looked directly at my brother, who was now leaning against the wall, arms crossed defensively. Elliot, I don't think I'm better than you. I never have. But I'm not going to pretend my choices and hard work haven't led to different outcomes than yours. Turning to my parents, I continued. And I need you both to respect my boundaries. No more driving by my house unannounced. No more demanding I apologize for my achievements. No more making me responsible for Elliot's feelings. My father started to object, but I held up my hand. This isn't a negotiation. These are my terms for having a relationship with me going forward. You can take some time to think about whether that's something you want. With that, I nodded to Sophia and Grandma Grace. We left the house together, the sound of Elliot's renewed shouting fading behind us as we walked to our cars. The drive back to our hotel was quiet, the emotional drain of the confrontation leaving all three of us exhausted. But beneath the fatigue, I felt something unexpected, a lightness, as if speaking these truths had lifted a weight I'd carried my entire life. "I'm proud of you," Sophia said, reaching for my hand across the console. "That couldn't have been easy." "It wasn't," I agreed. "But it was necessary." Grandma Grace, who had followed us back to the hotel, hugged me tightly in the lobby. "You did good, Miles. Really good." For the first time in my life, I had stood up to the family dynamic that had diminished me for decades. Whether they heard me or not, I had finally spoken my truth. The week after the confrontation passed in a strange haze. I returned to Philadelphia and threw myself into making my new house a home. There was something therapeutic about stripping old wallpaper, sanding rough edges, and applying fresh paint, transforming spaces that had been neglected, just as I was transforming my own boundaries and expectations. My parents hadn't called, which didn't surprise me. Elliot had sent one rambling late-night text accusing me of destroying the family, which I didn't dignify with a response. The extended family grapevine was apparently buzzing with conflicting versions of events, according to occasional texts from cousins I rarely spoke to. None of it mattered as much as I expected it would. Each day in my new house, making it truly mine, reinforced that I had built a life that didn't depend on their approval or understanding. Sophia began spending more weekends at the house, helping with projects, and gradually bringing more of her belongings over. We established a routine of Friday night takeout eaten on camping chairs in the unfinished dining room, planning the next day's renovation tasks. "I think this place is good for you," she observed one evening as we shared Thai food on the back porch. "You seem lighter somehow." She was right. The constant background anxiety of trying to earn family approval had faded, replaced by the satisfaction of creating something tangible with my own hands. 3 weeks after the confrontation, my phone rang with my mother's number. I braced myself before answering. "Miles," she said, her voice tentative. "How are you?" "I'm well," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "The house renovations are coming along." That's good." An awkward pause followed. "I've been thinking about what you said. About how we treated you growing up." I waited, not offering the easy absolution she might have been hoping for. "I don't think we realized," she continued hesitantly, "how it looked from your perspective. We never meant to make you feel less important." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from her. "Thank you for saying that," I replied simply. "Your father and I would like to visit sometime. To see your house properly. If that would be okay with you." "I need to know it would just be you and Dad," I said carefully. "And I need you to respect that this is my achievement, not something to be diminished or compared to Elliot's situation." "Elliot's actually moved to Austin," she said, sounding tired. "He said there's a better music scene there. He's not speaking to us right now." I felt a twinge of empathy for my parents, finally experiencing Elliot's cold shoulder after years of catering to his every whim. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. "Would next month work for a visit?" she asked, changing the subject. "We could stay at a hotel nearby." We settled on dates, and while I felt cautiously optimistic, I kept my expectations measured. Decades of patterns wouldn't change overnight. Grandma Grace was the first family member to officially visit the house, arriving with a houseplant and a framed photo of me at my college graduation, one she had taken herself since my parents weren't there. "A home needs living things and memories," she explained, placing the plant on the newly installed kitchen island. We spent the weekend showing her the neighborhood, introducing her to Sophia's favorite local restaurants, and sitting on the back deck sharing stories I'd never heard about her own challenging relationship with my mother growing up. "Some patterns repeat unless we consciously break them," she said sagely. "You're breaking the pattern, Miles. That takes courage." Tyler visited next, spending a long weekend helping me install new flooring in the master bedroom while catching me up on neighborhood gossip from Chicago. Elliot apparently told everyone you had a complete breakdown, he reported with an eye roll. But most people who know you both aren't buying it. Let him tell whatever story helps him sleep at night, I replied, surprised to find I genuinely didn't care anymore. 2 months after moving in, Victoria and several colleagues visited for an impromptu housewarming party organized by Sophia. The house was still a work in progress. The kitchen cabinets were installed but missing hardware, and the guest bathroom was mid-renovation, but it felt right to share the space with people who had supported me. To Miles, Victoria toasted, raising her glass in the backyard where we'd set up folding tables. Who proves that integrity and hard work still matter in this world. Looking around at these people, none related by blood but all genuinely invested in my happiness, I realized I had created my own family. These were people who celebrated my successes without feeling threatened, who offered help without keeping score, who saw my value without needing to diminish it. My parents' visit, when it finally happened, was awkward but civil. My father inspected my renovation work with grudging approval, and my mother brought a housewarming gift, a set of wine glasses that were exactly to her taste and not at all to mine, but I recognized the effort behind the gesture. "You've done well for yourself," my father said as they were leaving. Coming from him, it was high praise. "Thank you," I replied simply. We didn't discuss Elliot, though I had heard through Grandma Grace that he was struggling in Austin, already talking about moving back to Chicago. When the music scene gets too commercial, some patterns were harder to break than others. As summer turned to fall, the house transformed from a project into a home. Sophia officially moved in after we decided life was too short to maintain separate residences when we spent all our time together anyway. The day she unpacked the last of her boxes, we sat on our new sofa, our first major furniture purchase together, and talked about the future. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Confronting your family that way?" I considered the question carefully. No. I regret that it was necessary, but not that I did it. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm not carrying their expectations and disappointments around with me. In therapy, Dr. Chen had helped me understand that while I couldn't change my family's dynamics, I could change how I responded to them. I could set boundaries, maintain my self-worth, and build relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. 6 months after moving in, we hosted a proper housewarming party. Grandma Grace came, along with Tyler, Victoria, colleagues, neighbors, and friends. My parents declined the invitation. They had a commitment related to Elliot's latest return to Chicago, but sent a card, which felt like progress of a sort. As I looked around at our completely renovated kitchen filled with people I cared about, I realized something profound. Success isn't measured by comparison to others or by family approval. True success is building a life that aligns with your values, surrounded by people who genuinely support you. The house that had triggered such family drama had become something much more important than a financial investment or status symbol. It was tangible proof that I had broken the cycle of seeking validation from people unwilling or unable to give it. It represented not just financial independence, but emotional independence as well. For anyone out there struggling with family dynamics that make you feel invisible or unworthy, know this: you can build your own definition of success. You can create your own family of choice. And sometimes, standing firm in your achievements is the most powerful act of self-care possible. If my story resonated with you in any way, please hit like and subscribe to support the channel. Drop a comment sharing your own experience with family favoritism or golden child syndrome. What boundaries have you had to set for your own well-being? Have you ever had a personal achievement dismissed by family? Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles makes them a little easier to bear. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your worth isn't determined by those who can't see your value.